Welcome to Time Travelling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. This week we join the Doctor and Sarah Jane as they get brought in to investigate a seed pod discovered in Antarctica. We'll be discussing the Doctor, the companions and the villains and giving our thoughts on the story as a whole.
We would also love to hear your thoughts on the story, so as always, to join the discussion you can check us out at Time Team, that's TimeTeamp on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. Now, it has been a couple of weeks since we have recorded. I would apologise again for the technical issues. They're on my end, as per usual. But Paddy, will you give us a story recap, please?
I will indeed. Also, I'm angry at the cruel irony of the fact that we're talking about a story based in Antarctica where we're having an extremely hot day here in Ireland.
Oh yeah, I mean, but extremely hot for us is like it's like 22 degrees.
Yeah, we don't handle heat well, us pasty Irish.
No, like I said, I'm going to Vegas in August. I'm going to die, but it'll be fun.
Part 1. On a glacier in Antarctica, two scientists are digging into the soft snow looking for geological samples. One of them, Winlet, uncovers a small sphere and tells his colleague Morberly that they should take it back to their base to analyse it. Later, Stevenson, who is the base's botanist, confirms that it is vegetable in origin, but he will need to wait for it to fully defrost before he can learn anything else. Winlet says that it looks like a tropical seed, but Morberly, who is a zoologist, says the depth they found it at would indicate that it was about 20,000 years old and therefore too long to be of tropical in origin. Their attention is drawn to Stevenson, who stares at the pod intensely and says that he feels like it's alive. Winlet and Morberly initially joke at this comment, but when they see that he is serious, they suggest a cup of coffee and playing a game of cards to ease his concerns. Before they leave, though, Stevenson takes some pictures of the pod and sends them back to the World Ecology Bureau in London for assessment. At the Bureau, the Doctor is shown the pictures by Dunbar, an aide to the head of the Bureau, Sir Colin Thackeray. Dunbar is sceptical of the Doctor's ability to help them, but the Doctor tells him to contact the base immediately and order them not to touch the pod until he gets there. Back at the base, Stevenson informs Winlet that the pod has grown since they brought it back to the base, and it seems to be responding to ultraviolet radiation. Stevenson is reluctant to adhere to the orders from the Bureau, fearing it could jeopardize an amazing scientific discovery. Later, Dunbar visits a house in the country belonging to Harrison Chase, an eccentric millionaire who is heavily involved in ecological conservation. Dunbar shows him pictures of the pod and offers to sell it to him, saying that it might be extraterrestrial in origin and could potentially adapt to Earth's biosphere. Chase seems interested in the pod and asks Dunbar for the location as to where it was found. Once he gets it, he tells Dunbar that they will meet again soon and has one of his associates, Hargreaves, escort him from the house. He then calls two of his other associates, Keeler and Scorby, and instructs them to go to the base to retrieve the pod. At the base, Winlet falls asleep while keeping an eye on the pod. The pod opens up and a group of roots whip out and wrap themselves around his arm. Winlet calls out for help before collapsing to the ground. Stevenson and Morberly arrive and see that his skin has turned blotchy green. Stevenson calls the Bureau and Sir Colin says that they won't be able to get medical assistance to them due to the poor weather, but Dunbar says maybe the Doctor can help as he should be arriving soon. Morberly greets the Doctor and Sarah Jane after they are dropped off by helicopter, and he brings the Doctor to see Winlet before taking Sarah Jane to get warm due to the freezing conditions. Stevenson tells the Doctor that his body temperature and pulse have been steadily dropping. The Doctor pulls down the sheets covering Winlet and they see that his body is now covered in a massive green foliage. The Doctor gets Stevenson to show him to the lab. En route, they meet Morberly, who says that a medical team from the South Bend base had to turn back due to the weather, and a request has been sent for a medical military team to try and reach them. Stevenson says Winlet will be dead by then, and the Doctor reveals that he was actually transforming into something else, and asks Morberly to prepare a blood test. Stevenson recounts his initial experiments on the pod, and the Doctor says that he may have put the world into jeopardy. They then go with Sarah Jane to the site where they found the pod, and the Doctor finds another one there. Stevenson asks if there is more, but the Doctor says that the pods travel in pairs and doesn't elaborate further apart from saying they need to get it to the base and frozen as soon as possible. Once there, Morberly shows the Doctor the blood sample he took from Winlet. When he views it through the microscope, he sees that the sample is full of schizophytes and reveals that Winlet's DNA is being rewritten. They then hear an aircraft approaching, and Stevenson and Morberly go to see who it is. Once they are gone, the Doctor reveals to Sarah Jane that the pods are actually called crinoids and are an alien weed that devours all life on any planet it lands on in order to sustain itself. Sarah Jane asks how it arrived on Earth, and the Doctor says that any planetary upheaval on their homeworld could have jettisoned the pods into space. Morberly and Stevenson return with the crew of the aircraft, who are revealed to be Scorby and Keeler. The Doctor then asks to see Winlet again, and they all leave Scorby and Keeler to warm themselves up. They see that the transformation has progressed, and the Doctor suggests amputating the arm to kill the infection at its source. However, he says it will only be a temporary reprieve in order to find a cure. The Doctor says that Morbley will have to do the procedure, but he's reluctant to do so. Sarah Jane says that as a zoologist, he is the best qualified to do it, and they all say that they will help him through it. He agrees, and they go to fetch the medical kit, and once they have it, Morbley goes to prepare for the lab for operation. However, he is attacked by Winlet in the corridor. Part 2. Winlet kills Morbley and makes his way out of the base. Meanwhile, in the living area, Scorby finds a machine gun for the base's defense and tells Keeler to keep an eye out whilst he removes the firing pin, saying he dislikes guns in the hands of people he doesn't trust. Keeler says that they've only been sent to confirm if the pod is extraterrestrial and goes uncomfortable when Scorby says that they will be taking it by force. Scorby tells Keeler that they will kill the others and bury them in the snow, so their disappearance will be marked as a lost expedition. Keeler refuses to go along with it, but Scorby says that he will kill him as well unless he does as he is ordered. In the corridor, Sarah Jane finds Morbley's body and brings the Doctor and Stevenson to it. They then go to check on Winlet and find his room empty. Stevenson says that he can't believe Winlet would have killed Morbley, but the Doctor says that Winlet no longer exists and that it was the crinoid that he has turned into that did the killing. He says that they will need to find him and destroy him before it is too late. They go back to the living area and tell Scorby and Keeler that they are going out, with Stevenson retrieving the machine gun. After they leave, Scorby tells Keeler that they need to find a pod. Scorby ransacks the lab as they search for the pod, much to Keeler's distaste. Suddenly a message comes in over the radio from the South Bend base, saying that the weather has cleared at their location and the military medical team is en route. Scorby, pretending to be Morbley, tells them that everything is okay and to cancel the rescue team. The South Bend caller grows suspicious and Scorby sabotages the radio to prevent any further contact. Back at Chase's house, Dunbar informs him about the infection, but Chase tells him not to worry and that Scorby will be bringing back the pod. He then gives Dunbar his bribe and promises to keep his part in their theft a secret. Back in Antarctica, the Doctor, Sarah Jane and Stevenson track Winlet to the base's generator plant, which Stevenson says is being run on a new experimental fuel, which is why it's so far from the base. They go check on it to search for any sign of Winlet. Stephen voices his skepticism about the Doctor's claims about the crinoids, but the Doctor angrily tells him that as long as Winlet is alive, then the world is in danger. Sarah Jane says that he is most likely frozen outside in the blizzard and that they should be safe until they find him. They leave to continue the search, unaware that they are being watched by the crinoid. Back at the base, Scorby and Keeler have found the open pod, and Keeler, who is a botanist, says that the plant has been taken out of it. Scorby says that Chase wants the plant, and they continue to search for the base. They eventually go to the lab and find Morbley's body, but quickly go into hiding when they hear the others return. Keeler calls the Doctor and Sarah Jane into the lab, and once they arrive, Scorby holds them at gunpoint and demands to know what killed Morbley. The Doctor and Sarah Jane tell them about Winlet being infected by the pod, but they don't give any specifics. The Doctor says that Winlet will need food and warmth, and Scorby realizes that he won't stay too far from the base. He and Keeler take them back to the living area and tie them up. Scorby then demands to know where the plant from the pod is. When the Doctor tries to explain to him about Winlet becoming a crinoid, Scorby attempts to hit him, but stops when he hears Stevenson calling out for them. Scorby calls him to the living area, and when Stevenson sees them tied up, he threatens him with a machine gun. However, Scorby disarms him when the gun doesn't work and tells him to sit with the others. The Doctor informs him of their desire to get the pod, and Stevenson accidentally lets slip about the second pod. Scorby demands to know where it is, and the Doctor berates him for his ignorance. Scorby then threatens them one at a time with his gun, and the Doctor tells him that it's in a freezer when he threatens Sarah Jane. Scorby then takes Stevenson with him to retrieve the pod and leaves Keeler to watch the others. The Doctor senses that Keeler is not like Scorby and appeals to him as a fellow scientist. Sarah Jane joins him and says that if he releases them, they can work together to stop Winlet. However, Scorby and Stevenson return with the pod and Scorby tells him to tie him up with the others. He then says that he has an idea and takes Sarah Jane with him, and the Doctor demands that he bring her back. Scorby orders Sarah Jane to take them to the generator plant, and once there, starts to rig it up with explosives, which will cause a chain reaction and destroy the base as well. Keeler says that it is cold-blooded murder, but Scorby ignores him. Keeler tries to fight him, but Scorby easily overpowers him and tells him that they need to leave as the bomb will go off in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, the Doctor manages to get to his feet and knocks over a lamp in order to use the broken glass to cut through the ropes holding him and Stevenson. The Doctor tells him to radio the South Bend base to see if they can intercept Scorby's plane on its way back to England. He then goes to find Sarah Jane. However, as Stevenson attempts to call the South Bend base, the crinoid bursts in and attacks him. Out in the snow, the Doctor sees the plane take off and makes his way to the generator plant. He finds Sarah Jane there, but she tells him to defuse the bomb first. Suddenly, the Crinoid bursts in and prevents the Doctor and Sarah Jane from defusing the bomb. They manage to lock it inside and flee out of the blast radius. The bomb goes off, destroying the generator plant and the base. Part 3. Hours later, Sarah Jane wakes up in the snow when she hears the sound of an approaching vehicle. 3 men approach her, and one of them introduces himself as Chester, a doctor from the South Bend camp. He says that the others are members of the military medical team that have come to help with the rescue. Sarah Jane frantically begins searching for the Doctor, and they find him nearby, face down in the snow. However, he wakes up and gives them a reassuring smile. Meanwhile, Scorby and Keeler arrive back at Chase's house with the pod and inform him as to the events at the base. Chase laments the loss of the other pod, but they are interrupted by the arrival of Dunbar. He voices his disgust at the destruction of the base, but Chase says that he was paid handsomely, so he should just accept what happened. However, Dunbar reveals that the Doctor and Sarah Jane survived and are en route to the Bureau to meet up with himself and Sir Colin. Later at the meeting, Sir Colin wonders why anyone would want to go to such lengths to steal the pod, and the Doctor says that its uniqueness makes it valuable. He becomes exasperated when Dunbar voices his skepticism, and Sarah Jane takes over the explanation as to what happened at the base. However, she too grows frustrated, and the Doctor takes over the conversation again and says that someone else is behind the theft and that someone within the Bureau was an accomplice. Sir Colin is shocked by the claim, and the Doctor says that enough money will tempt anyone. Sir Colin says that he will put the full resources of the Bureau at their disposal, and the Doctor asks Dunbar to arrange a car to the Botanic Institute. A short while later, a car comes to collect them, but the driver instead takes him to an isolated country road and tells him to get out of the car at gunpoint. The Doctor manages to knock him to the ground, and then he and Sarah Jane flee into a nearby quarry, pursued by the driver. The Doctor manages to get the drop on him and knocks him out. They then go back to the car to find any clue as to who he was working for. Sarah Jane finds an expensive painting in the boot of the car, painted by the renowned botanical artist Amelia Ducat. They go to visit Ducat at her house and ask her who bought it from her. After some word association to remember the name, she reveals that Chase took it from her. At Chase's home, Keeler runs some tests on the pod, but they come back with negative results. He tries to get Chase to destroy the pod, saying that what happened was Windlet in Antarctica, but Chase says that with the proper precautions, there is nothing to worry about. A call comes through informing them that the driver has been taken to hospital. At that moment, the Doctor wearing the driver's hat and coat arrives at the house and is let in by the security. Sarah Jane gets up from hiding, and together they sneak in through the back. However, they are shot at by the guards as they race through the grounds of the house, but they are eventually captured by Scorby. He brings them to see Chase, and after some witty repartee, the Doctor demands to be given the pod. However, Chase refuses, saying that the flower from the pod will be the crowning piece of his collection of rare and unique botanical specimens. He then says that he will have them both killed for their constant interference, but says he will show them his collection before they die. Once in the greenhouse, Chase uses an electronic soundboard to play a series of strange melodies, which he says he uses to talk to the plants. The Doctor and Sarah Jane are not too impressed by the sounds produced from it, and they are spared further suffering when Hargreaves arrives to tell Chase that Keeler says the pod is beginning to open. Chase leaves Scorby in charge, and he takes them out of the greenhouse to execute them. However, they manage to distract him and incapacitate him before making their way to the perimeter wall. Sarah Jane says they need to call Sir Colin, and the Doctor says that they will get her out so that she can make the call, whilst he goes back to deal with the pod. The Doctor lowers her over the wall, but a short while later she accidentally steps on a branch and is captured by a pair of guards, who bring her back to Scorby. He takes her to Chase's office, where Chase and Keeler are observing the pod as it continues to grow. Chase demands to know where the Doctor has gone, but she refuses to tell him, even when Scorby points a gun at her. Chase says that they will use her as a guinea pig to see what happens when the vines within the pod touches her skin. The Doctor, who's observing the events from the skylight above the office, watches in horror as the pod begins to open. Part 4. The Doctor dives through the skylight and knocks out Scorby by breaking a chair over him. He then takes up Scorby's gun and holds the others at gunpoint whilst he frees Sarah Jane, and they then escape, locking the others inside. As Chase bangs on the door to be released, the pod suddenly opens and the vines wrap themselves around Keeler's arm. A guard opens the door and Scorby orders him to follow him so they can raise the alarm to recapture the Doctor and Sarah Jane. Chase watches in fascination as Keeler begins to rapidly transform into a crinoid. Chase refuses to call an ambulance and instead orders a confused Hargreaves to bring him to an old cottage on the grounds. Meanwhile, the Doctor tells Sarah Jane to hide in a coal bunker whilst he tries to draw off the guards. Sarah Jane comments that he doesn't use guns to defend himself, but the Doctor remarks that Scorby and the others don't know that before setting off. He rushes back to Chase's office but finds it empty. Scorby appears with a machine gun and reveals that Keeler was attacked by the mines. The doctor tells him that Chase is insane, but Scorby says that he doesn't care as Chase pays him well for his services. He then forces the doctor out of the office and leads him to a storage room where he starts to beat him. He then shows him a giant composting machine and orders a guard to tie up the doctor. Several hours later, Keeler wakes up in the cottage to see that his transformation has progressed. He begs to be given medical attention, but Chase is obsessed with seeing how the transformation will turn out, and he leaves with Hargreaves to get the monitoring equipment. As they leave, Chase assures Hargreaves that everything will be okay so long as they keep him confined. Unbeknownst to them, they are being watched by Sarah Jane. Chase arrives back at his greenhouse, and Scorby enters, telling him of the doctor's capture and the continuing search for Sarah Jane. The phone then rings, and a guard at the entrance informs Chase that Ducat is outside, demanding to see him so she can get the money he owes her, otherwise she will seek legal aid. Chase relents and orders the guard to bring her to the library. Meanwhile, Sarah Jane enters the cottage and hears Keeler's moans, which she goes to investigate. She is shocked to see him in his transformed state, but he assures her that he means her no harm. He asks her what happened to Winlet, but she says the doctor will be able to give him better information and asks where he might be. Keeler says that he will help her look for him if she unties him, but she refuses. He says that he won't hurt her, but she says that the crinoid within him might overpower him. He grows angry, saying that everyone wants him to die. She then hears someone approaching and hides in a closet just as Hargreaves comes in with food for Keeler. In the library, Chase goes to meet Ducat, and after a brief discussion about his collection, he writes a check for her. Scorby arrives to ask about starting the composter, but upon seeing Ducat, he refers to it as a recycling experiment. Ducat asks what the experiment is, but Chase says that it's top secret and has Scorby escort her out. As he is showing her out, Scorby is brought away by one of the guards to give an update on the search for Sarah Jane. Unbeknownst to them, Sarah Jane, having managed to sneak out of the cottage, emerges from hiding behind a suit of armour and asks Ducat to relay a message to Sir Colin about the pod. She then goes back into hiding when Scorby returns to show Ducat out. He says he thought he heard voices, but Ducat says that she talks to herself in her old age. Meanwhile, Chase arrives at the composting room and reveals that he's been keeping Keeler safe and nurtured, leading the concerned doctor to ask if he has been feeding him. Chase ignores him and has a guard place him into the composter. He then tells the doctor that he will set the machine to start automatically, which will kill him and destroy his body before feeding it into the garden. He then leaves after the machine starts. A short while later, Sarah Jane arrives and the doctor tells her to turn off the composter. She accidentally speeds it up at first, but manages to stop it and free him. She then tells him about Keeler. At the cottage, Hargreaves enters the room with another plate of food, but is horrified when he sees that Keeler has completely turned into a crinoid. Outside the house, Ducat enters Sir Colin's car and tells him that his concerns were true as she relays Sarah Jane's message to him. Sir Colin says that they should call Unit, but Dunbar, who is also in attendance, says that he will go and try to help them, saying that he needs to make amends for his mistake. He says that if he is not back in 30 minutes, then they should go back to London and call Unit. Dunbar makes his way to Chase's office, where he confronts him about what he has done. Hargreaves then arrives and says that Keeler has gotten loose, and Dunbar pulls a gun and says that he will go kill him. Chase, refusing to let him stop his study of the crinoid, orders Scorby to stop Dunbar. Meanwhile, the doctor and Sarah Jane arrive at the cottage and find Keeler missing, and they go to look for him, with the doctor taking a sword from the wall as they leave. They hear gunshots coming from the woods, followed by a scream, and they arrive to find the crinoid, now roughly the size of a small tree, standing over Dunbar's body. The doctor swings the sword at it to keep it at bay, but Sarah Jane screams as it advances on them. Part 5. Scorby and a group of guards arrive and open fire when they see the crinoid. The doctor and Sarah Jane use the distraction as a chance to escape and tell Scorby and the others to flee as well. They make their way back to the cottage, and the doctor tells them to bar the door and keep quiet so as not to draw the attention of the crinoid. Scorby is incredulous when they tell him that Keeler turned into the crinoid, but he's distracted when he gets a call from Chase on his walkie-talkie. Chase demands that he ensure that the crinoid not be harmed, and Scorby tries to reason with him but to no avail. The doctor takes the walkie-talkie to try and appeal to him, but Chase cuts the communication. Scorby asks how big it will grow, and the doctor says that it will continue to grow until it encompasses the entire planet. Suddenly, a tendril breaks through one of the windows, and Scorby shoots at it while Sarah Jane tries to attack it with an axe, but is thrown back. The doctor stabs it, forcing it to retreat, and he tells the crinoid that they are not afraid of it. The crinoid responds in a booming, ghostly voice and says that if the doctor goes out to it, then it will spare the others. The doctor and Sarah Jane realize that it is only making the offer because it knows the doctor is a threat to it, but Scorby demands that he go out to the crinoid. The doctor angrily says that he is the only hope they have of stopping it, and that Scorby's attempts to save himself will be pointless. The Crinoid says it will give them until daybreak, but the doctor says that by that time it will have grown large enough to smash the cottage to pieces and kill them all. The doctor then asks Scorby to make a firebomb so they can use it on the Crinoid and give the doctor a chance to escape. Meanwhile, at the Bureau, Sir Colin and Ducat are waiting to get through to Unit. They are told that the Brigadier is unavailable, but they are told that his subordinate, Major Beresford, will join them as soon as possible. In the morning, Scorby has prepared a Molotov cocktail, and the doctor tells him that after he leaves, to take Sarah Jane to the main house and keep her safe. Scorby then goes upstairs and throws the Molotov at the Crinoid, and it recoils in pain from the flames, allowing the doctor to escape. It takes off after him, and once the coast is clear, Scorby, Sarah Jane and the guards escape to the main house. Once there, they are told by Hargreaves that Chase went outside to try and take some photographs of the Crinoid. An incredulous Scorby tells him to gather up as much wood as possible so they can start to board up the windows, and Sarah Jane says that she heard a car leave, which means the doctor must have gotten away. Scorby says that he probably left in order to save himself, but Sarah Jane retorts that he cares about other people, unlike Scorby and Chase. Scorby angrily tells her to follow his instructions or he'll kill her, but she refuses to be intimidated by him, and he storms off. Outside, Chase encounters the Crinoid and fascinatedly takes some photos of it. However, he recoils in horror as it approaches him, and he says that he wants to try and help it. Later, the doctor arrives to the Bureau and goes to Sir Colin's office, where he's explained the situation to the recently arrived Major Beresford. Beresford says that he can't launch a raid on the property without proof. The doctor tells him that within the next few hours, all the vegetation on the planet will turn hostile as a result of the Crinoid's influence. When they scoff at his statements, he shows them a message he took from Sir Colin's secretary, which lists reports of a series of strangulations of people, all found in vegetated areas within a mile of Chase's estate. He then calls the estate and tells Sarah Jane that they're on their way back, but the phone goes dead after the Crinoid's tendrils ripped out the telephone lines. Scorby returns and Sarah Jane tells them about the doctor coming back, but they are forced to take cover when they see the ivy vines cracking through the windows. Hargreaves comes in and says that all the guards have fled and it is just them left. He says he heard screaming from the garden, and Sarah Jane heads out to investigate, followed by a reluctant Scorby. They go outside and find one of the guards strangled by some of the vines. Suddenly Chase appears and says that he needs to get his photographs developed. As he leaves, he says that he accepts the idea of the Crinoid using the plants to take over the planet. Scorby says that he is insane, but Sarah Jane says that he seems to have been insane for a long time. They go back to the main house, where they find him talking to the plants in his greenhouse. Scorby tries to talk to him, but he seems to be in a trance and begins to speak, referring to himself as part of the plant life seeking to rid the world of humanity and animals. Sarah Jane then notices the plants beginning to move towards them. The plants start to strangle Sarah Jane and the others, and Chase calmly tells them not to resist. Suddenly, the doctor and a unit soldier burst into the greenhouse and begin to spray the plants with herbicide. Chase tries to stop them, but to no avail, and angrily swears revenge before escaping. The doctor manages to free Sarah Jane and Scorby, but discovers Hargreaves has been killed, so they leave and seal off the greenhouse. They then start to take all the plants out of the lab to prevent the Crinoid from using them, but after they go outside, Chase shuts the door and locks them out. They desperately try to break back in, and suddenly the Crinoid appears, towering over the house. Part 6. The Crinoid is forced back and is hit by a sudden barrage of lasers, fired by Beresford and his men. The doctor spots another door across the yard, and they rush to it, managing to get inside whilst the creature is distracted. They go back to the lab, and the doctor says they need to find Chase. He then remembers that Sarah Jane said that he managed to get photos of the Crinoid and must have returned unharmed, and therefore he is possessed by the Crinoid. He then tells Scorby and the soldier to search one side of the house, whilst he and Sarah Jane search the other. After they leave, Chase returns to the lab and smashes the radio, preventing them from trying to call outside for help. The soldier comes to collect the doctor and Sarah Jane when he says that more and more tendrils are breaking through the windows, and they retreat to the lab where Scorby is waiting for them. He gives them his gun whilst he goes to find more timber to reinforce the windows, but he is ambushed by Chase, who clubs him over the head with a wrench. He then drags his body to the composter room and feeds it to the machine. Scorby starts to panic and suggests that they should make a run for it, but the doctor says that the Crinoid's influence over the local vegetation has grown stronger and would stop them from escaping. Scorby says that they have been abandoned by Beresford and the others, but Sarah Jane tells him to shut up as his panicking is starting to annoy her. The doctor starts to work on repairing the radio in an effort to reach outside, whilst the Crinoid starts attacking other parts of the house to try and break in. Scorby uses the opportunity and runs outside, ignoring the doctor and Sarah Jane's pleas to come back. He fights through the foliage and falls into a pond near the edge of the estate. However, as he tries to get out, he is pulled back under the water by pondweeds and drowned. Back in the house, the doctor tells Sarah Jane to find the soldier so he can find the radio frequency Beresford is using. She finds the planks he was collecting and makes her way to the composting room, where she is confronted by Chase. He starts to speak about his appreciation of the crinoid and how it will wipe out the plague of humanity off the planet. In the lab, the doctor manages to get through to Beresford, who is taking up position at the edge of the estate with Sir Colin. The doctor tells him that they have only about 15 minutes before the crinoid germinates the entire planet by launching seed pods into the atmosphere. He says that the only way to stop it is to launch an air assault on it with high explosives. Sir Colin points out the danger that both he and Sarah Jane will be in, but the doctor says that stopping the crinoid is more important. The doctor then goes to find Sarah Jane. He heads to the composting room where he finds her in the machine, and he manages to switch it off before she is fed into it. Chase appears and tries to stop him, but the doctor throws him to the ground. The doctor helps Sarah Jane out of the composter, but he's attacked by Chase, who turns on the machine again. The doctor pulls him into the machine, but he tells Sarah Jane to turn off the machine. However, her hands are still tied up and she's unable to turn it off, and they watch as Chase is fed into it. Outside, the attack squadron does a sighting run over the house before circling back to prepare for the attack. Sir Colin asks Beresford to see if there's any sign of the doctor and Sarah Jane, but he says nothing has been reported yet. In the house, the doctor and Sarah Jane find their exit blocked by foliage, but the doctor takes a steam pipe from the wall and directs it at the foliage, which recoils in pain. They then fight their way through it and manage to find their way into a clearing moments before the air raid commences. They watch as the crinoid and the house is destroyed by the firebombs. Later, at the Bureau, Sir Colin asks the doctor if that is the last they will have heard of the crinoids, but he says that they can never be certain. Sir Colin then says that the doctor has been asked to speak at the Royal Horticultural Society, but the doctor says that he and Sarah Jane need a holiday and suggests going to a beach planet of Cassiopeia. They invite Sir Colin, who declines, saying that he is expected home for tea. However, the doctor and Sarah Jane, who has changed into beachwear, find themselves back in Antarctica. The duo then laugh as they wonder if they have arrived there after the events that have just happened or beforehand. End of the story. So, I'm going to give these 6-parters, they really take it out of me. So I'm going to give my voice a rest for about maybe 2 minutes before chiming in whilst Trish does the trivia spot. So what have you got for us this week?
Cool. So the air date for The Seeds of Doom is the 31st of January to the 6th of March 1976. The writer of the story is Robert Banks Stewart. This is the second and final story from Robert, who previously saw his work in Terror of the Zygons. The director is Douglas Campfield. This is the final of 11 stories for Dougie. We previously saw his work in An Unearthly Child, where he did some of the filming sequences with Boris. Planet of Giants, where he did episode 3. The Crusade. He did the location work for The Chase. The Time Meddler. The Daleks Master Plan. The Web of Fear. The Invasion. He did some of the work on Inferno. And also he did Terror of the Zygons. Rumoured working titles for the story are The Seeds of Death, which was changed, obviously, because we already had The Seeds of Death in season 6, so that would have been awkward. And also
Very
the
awkward.
Crinoid Invasion was apparently one of the working titles, though they're not on any paperwork currently available at the BBC. One of the things about this particular story is that it does have some strong influences, one of which is from one of Paddy's favourite things. So, Paddy, do you want to describe what inspired it?
The Thing.
Particularly The Thing from Another Planet.
Yes.
Or Who Goes There, if you're going by the short story.
Yeah, so Who Goes There deals with the actual alien entity. So that's the short story, first of all. That which is like the alien entity. The Thing from Another Planet or Thing from Another World, which I still have to watch fully.
That's correct.
We have to watch fully. Is the kind of the more vegetated version. It's like that's the more plant-based version. And then there's my absolute favorite movie of all time, John Carpenter's The Thing, which goes back to the alien organism side of things. Yeah.
So, obviously, just given the time that this story came out, it would have been the 1951 version of the film, The Thing from Another World. Mm-hmm. On the DVD commentary, Robert Stewart Banks also says that like he got accused of like stealing the idea of like a hostile, mobile alien plant from the Day of the Triffids, but he said that like they draw from common roots, like it's a common enough story. I think he actually pointed out that like the Day of the Triffids like stole from other stuff as well. So
yeah, I think that like the Day of the Triffids has been like it's one of those don't throw stones if you live in a glass house type things.
Yeah. Exactly. This story marks the Doctor's final major involvement with the unit up until Battlefield in season 26. So while there will be sort of mentions of units sort of here and there, this is the last, I'm going to say, somewhat major unit story until we get to Battlefield. It's also the first unit story to not have either the Brigadier or Benton. With this being one of the times where the Brig can't help you now, he's in Geneva. Which is still a fantastic song that you can find on YouTube. I love it. So yeah, it's crazy thing. This is the first unit story where we haven't had the Brigadier or Benton inside now. There were talks of bringing the Brigadier and Benton back for this episode, but we sort of felt that there wasn't really enough material to warrant it. And while it was sort of offered to Nicholas, I think we mentioned the last time we spoke about Nicholas that he was committed to a theatre tour at the time and he wasn't really available. And afterwards, when he saw what the story was, he was kind of like, okay, like, it wasn't really a unit story from Nicholas' point of view.
It really wasn't.
This story is the last use of the current police box prop. It wore out and broke apart. Reportedly, it fell on Tom and Liz while they were inside it and hit Liz in the head. Which isn't good.
Nope, not good.
A few weeks before this serial was due to be transmitted, there was a bit of a problem where the PAL videotape, the colour videotape of part 1 went missing. And Philip was trying to frantically plan out a re-edit of part 2 to allow that to be the beginning of the story. Thankfully, because we know how re-editing of episodes goes, looking at you, Planet of Giants, they did find the episode. The tape was found, and apparently it had just been misplaced in the tape storage system because it was numbered incorrectly. I can't imagine how you could have reworked episode 2 to essentially be episode 1. That would take some very crafty rejigging, I think.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work at all.
So Kenneth Gilbert, who plays Richard Dunbar, he actually almost didn't get to appear in the story. So after the second session of pre-filming, he contracted chickenpox from his daughter. And originally he just wanted to take a few days off, but his doctor said that he had to take 2 weeks off. Thankfully, because he'd already done some of the pre-filming work, and he was obviously familiar with the role, Dougie moved the shooting schedule around to allow for him to do his filming at the end. But Kenneth was convinced that, like, had he not done the pre-filming beforehand, he would have lost the story entirely because of chickenpox.
Jesus.
The crinoid costume may look familiar-ish to people who have seen the Claws of Axos. It is taken from one of the Axon costumes and sprayed green.
I thought it looked familiar, alright.
Yep. I think it looks better green.
It does.
Speaking. The name crinoid, which is spelt with a K, so Krynoid, apparently is adapted from crinoid, spelled Crinoid, which is a flower-like creature that's sort of like a starfish, sea urchin type thing. This is the only Doctor Who story where stuntman Alan Chuntz actually plays a character. And not this is his only on-screen credit he has. He plays the chauffeur. Usually he's just a stuntman. This is his only on-screen credit, so good for you, Alan. Philip Hinchcliffe wasn't a big fan of Amelia Ducat. Or I must say, the first time Paddy sent me this woman's name, because I completely forgot about her, I was like, why are we discussing Ducat? In this. But yes, Amelia Ducat, Philip Hinchcliffe wasn't a fan of her character. He felt that the subplot was just largely for padding, and when he did the novelization, he just completely removed the character. Which is a bit harsh. And apparently some fans were very vocal in their objections to that choice. Because like, she was in the story, you know, more than a little bit. But yeah, no, he cut her out of the novel.
I would say that she has 2 relevant scenes, and her third scene is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. when the Doctor arrives in Antarctica, Moberly's confused by his appearance, saying he expected someone older. This was obviously mentioned earlier in the episode where they said, like, oh, they're sending some like random old fossil who doesn't know anything or whatever, and then obviously we have a young looking Doctor. This is apparently a bit of a reference to Bob Holmes' original concept for the Fourth Doctor being an older, eccentric man. But then they ended up casting Tom Baker, who is obviously quite younger than that. And so, you know, it was sort of a bit of a nod to that.
He's a younger, eccentric man.
Yeah. Michael McStay, who played Moberly, was actually injured in a car accident after leaving the studio. And according to Tom Baker, that is, his false beard hid the scars, which, if he had scars on his face, I can only imagine what that car accident was like.
Oof.
Interesting point that I had never heard before. Apparently, it was originally intended for Hand of Fear, which we'll get to in two more episodes before we get to Hand of Fear. Right? Mm-hmm. Apparently, that was originally meant to be the season finale, but the scripts weren't ready, and so Seeds of Doom was commissioned as a replacement story.
Oh,
which is interesting. Now, I will say that when we get to the Hand of Fear, it'll be very emotional. Because the Hand of Fear is when Sarah Jane leaves. And I hadn't realised it was coming up so soon. I don't think, and we may discuss it when we get there at the time, but I don't, like, if the Hand of Fear had been the season finale, I don't think that would have meant that Sarah Jane would have left at the end of this season.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we'll talk about it more when we get to the Hand of Fear, but Liz's leaving the show wasn't the purpose of a story, do you know?
Yeah.
So I think she still would have been there for the first two stories of the following season. Mm-hmm. I think that would have happened regardless.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the cast of this story. We have Michael Barrington playing Sir Colin Thackeray. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit from Michael. His non-Who credits include Porridge, Emu's Wild World, Emu's All Live Pink Windmill Show, All Live? No, Emu's All Live Pink Windmill Show. That makes more sense. Can We Get On Now Please, The New Avengers, and Z-Cars. Michael passed away in 1988. As Richard Dunbar, as I mentioned, we have Kenneth Gilbert. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit for Kenneth. His non-Who credits include The Heir of Skipton, The Three Musketeers, The Glanville Melodramas, Hamlet, Crown Court, The Tempest, Ivanhoe, and House of Cards. Kenneth passed away in 2015. As Arnold Keeler, we have Mark Jones, only Doctor Who acting credit for Mark. His non-Who credits include A Family at War, Z-Cars, Under Milkwood, Crown Court, The New Avengers, The O'Neill Line, Target, The Empire Strikes Back, where he played an Imperial officer, and Red Dwarf. Mark passed away in 2010. As Harrison Chase, we have Tony Beckley. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit for Tony, bit of a trend happening here. His non-Who credits include The Italian Job, Suspense, The Saint, Z-Cars, Falstaff, Treasure Island, Get Carter, and Revenge of the Pink Panther. Tony passed away in 1980. As Scorby, we have John Challis. How do you pronounce his last name?
I think it's Chalice.
Okay, we're going to go with Chalice. So. Again, only Doctor Who acting credit for John. On screen, he did provide a voice in a Big Finish production. He was the voice of the fifth incarnation of Drax in the audio story The Trouble with Drax. His non-Who credits include The Newcomers, Z-Cars, Bojest, The Green Grass, Benidorm, and obviously the role we all know him from in
Boise.
Horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, which it's impossible to watch him in anything else.
Oh gosh, is
that just me?
No, like I was watching this and all I just kept thinking in my head was like Marlene.
Yeah, no, it's very. He's one of those actors that is very. He's so much associated with one role that it's very difficult to differentiate different roles.
Yeah.
Sadly, John passed away last year in 2021. As Derek Moberly, we have Michael McStay, as I mentioned. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit for Michael. His non-Who credits include Coronation Street, Park Ranger, The Black Arrow, No Hiding Place, Z-Cars, and The Avengers. I'm very happy to say, I was doing this trivia and I was like, passed away. passed away. I was like, oh my god, are we actually going to get to the end and find that the only like living member of this cast is Tom Baker? No, thankfully Michael is at the point of recording still with us, which is slightly less depressing than the original list I have. John Stevenson is played by Hubert Rees. This is the third and final Doctor Who credit for Hubert. We previously saw him as the chief engineer in Fury from the Deep and as Captain Ransom in the War Games. His non-Who credits include Under Milkwood, Paul Temple, Public Eye, The Sweeney 2, Sherlock Holmes, and The Baker Street Boys. Hubert passed away in 2009. Lastly, as Amelia Ducat, we have Sylvia Coleridge. This is her only Doctor Who acting credit. Her non-Who credits include Tess, the 1967 version of Pride and Prejudice, Masterpiece Theatre's production of Bleak House, Angels, Armchair Thriller, Z-Cars, and The Lotus Eaters. Sylvia passed away in 1986. It's a very long list of characters. I don't think we're going to be discussing all of them.
No, we're not.
They were on the initial list Paddy gave me, so they're the ones I looked up.
Yeah. They had enough contributions to warrant a casting note or casting trivia, but not so much a discussion-based trivia, I think, or discussion-based thing. Molly. Oh. So, we now come on to the second. Oh God, I keep doing the second part. The next part, like, of the podcast. Paul has a complete fucking field day with this kind of shit. Like, so. For anyone of our listeners that does that has the crossover listening to Half Measures, Paul had a little bit of a rib at our expense because he was talking about he's been watching Doctor Who. He's in New Zealand, like most streaming services, they only get certain seasons at a time, so he's not in Matt Smith's era. But then he started talking about our podcast, thanks again, Paul, and about discussing the classic stories, and he said such as Genesis of the Daleks and the Space Pirates. Wanting to see what if we would Leatherface start swinging a chainsaw around wildly. So
he's lucky he lives very far away.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, our character discussion this week includes, as always, the Doctor, the companions of Sarah Jane, flying solo this week. This is the first time in a while we've had no story-based companions, I think.
We didn't have story-based companions for Android Invasion, I don't think.
Yeah, you're right. I sometimes just sometimes.
It's been a very long time since we recorded.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I've been on the prominent characters for Sir Colin, Dunbar, and Keeler.
Yes.
And then the villains of Chase, Scorby, and the Krynoid itself. Now, that's obviously not the order we're going to discuss the villains in. But the order that we are going to discuss stuff is in, as always, is the Doctor goes first. So, your thoughts on all teeth and curls?
It's a good showing from the Doctor here. I do think there was one moment where I was like, don't be a dick. Which is in episode 2, I believe. 1 or 2. When they're saying that they should cut off your man's arm to stop the spread of the infection. And clearly Moberly is freaked at the idea of doing it, and Stevenson doesn't have the necessary skills to do it. And Moberly's like, oh, can you not do it? And he says this comment of, you must help yourselves. Which, like, Sarah's like, he's not that kind of doctor. But I'm like, that just came across as incredibly callous given the circumstances. Like, just explain yourself and say, I'm sorry, I'm not that kind of doctor. You're in the best position here. As opposed to, you must help yourselves. It's like, this is I Walk in Eternity fucking bullshit again. Like,
no, this is like the Doctor cosplaying Zoidberg Jesus. Save me, Jesus. I save those who save themselves.
Yeah. So that was probably the only criticism I had of him. I was like, that was particularly callous. What I do love in this story is that we get another example of the Doctor's dedication to and care for Sarah Jane. Very reminiscent of encounters we've seen with them in the past where Sarah has been threatened. You know, the Doctor doesn't bluster when there's a gun pointed at Sarah's head. He's like, it's in the freezer. Like, if you're threatening her, it's actually like, on the one hand, it's very sweet. On the other hand, like, if you're a villain, just threaten Sarah Jane. The Doctor will tell you anything you need to know.
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that, like, he doesn't play fast and loose with her life.
No.
Ever. Which is great. It's really good to see. And, like, even, like, when Scorby takes her out of the room, that's where you have, like, him screaming Scorby over and over again.
Scorby! Yeah.
Which is so good. It's very Tom-esque, but such a great look into how scared he is for her. Do you know? We've actually had a lot of that this season, in a way, do you know? So I thought that was really good. I do love the way we see how he interacts with guns.
Yeah.
So first of all, he's using the pistol as a threat, and we have Sarah basically saying, "Why did you bother? You wouldn't even use it." He's like, "They don't know that." And then when the unit sergeant, who I was going to say right now, is a bit of a dick as well. But when the unit sergeant handed him the rifle, and he just, no comment, just hands it to Scorby. He's like, "I'm not going to fucking use this. You're Scorby. You use this. That's what you do." Which, you know, I think is probably like in one story is where the most we've seen of the Doctor doesn't use, like, this Doctor doesn't use guns. Do you know? I think it's probably one of the most prominent mentions of it. Compared to what we've seen in the past. The one thing I was a little bit sad about in the story is we don't get to see too much of Science Doctor here. We see, like, indignant observational Doctor, and we get to see undercover Doctor, but we don't see too much of him doing experiments, of him building something to solve the problem. Like, he has Scorby build the firebomb, or the Molotov cocktail, or whatever. He has the guys at the research base do the blood analysis. We don't see too much of him doing the science piece. Like, he doesn't come up with a way to kill the Crinoi. Well, he does, I suppose. He says, like, there's no option, just have to firebomb the building. But he doesn't come up with any alternatives.
No,
you know, like, he doesn't come up with the herbicide, like, which is, it's not bad. It's not a bad thing by any stretch. But it's an interesting, in a story this long, we don't see him doing a sciencey bit.
No, this is kind of more of a showcase of shouty, screamy, punchy Doctor. Like, so he's just, you know, maybe like Tom just came back from a night on the town, you know?
Yeah. Also, right? At one point when the Doctor and Sarah escape, or when they're escaping from Scorby on the grounds, this has been episode 3? 4? 3. There is an action by Tom and a sound effect by the Foley team that makes it look like he snapped Scorby's neck. Yeah. As he wrenches his head to the side, and they make a bone cracking noise, as if he just, like, killed him outright. And I remember going, "Holy shit, did he just try to kill him?" Obviously he didn't. Like, that's not what the Doctor was doing, but it was a very interesting directing choice.
I kind of pissed myself laughing at that because it was do you remember, like, the Darrow O'Brien thing about, like, chiropractors that that work on small children, and he was like, he did a chiropractic thing, and he was like, it's fucking voodoo, like, I've never seen a doctor, like, do that. I've seen Jason Bourne do it, but you can imagine, like, a bad guy kind of going, fucking hell, that's brilliant. Sure, the only reason I got into terrorism is because of the fucking constant pain of this thing in my neck. So maybe like that's what he was trying to do for Scorby, like a slight chiropractic adjustment.
Yeah, maybe he thought that was the source of Scorby's dickishness. But that was sort of me for the Doctor. So I think it was a good showing. Nothing really outstanding beyond his dedication to Sarah, which I like. But how about you?
Kind of more or less the same. Like, the three things that stand out to me for the Doctor in this story are his, like, very flippant attitude, like when he's in a hostage situation. He's just like, I don't care. I am smarter than all of you. His anger due to the threat of the crinoid. Like, he snaps an awful lot here. Like, I remember thinking that, Jesus, if Trish didn't like his fucking anger and snappishness in Pyramids of Mars, this wasn't be impressing her at all.
Well, the difference here is that the anger and snappishness of Pyramids of Mars, it was directed at his friend.
Yeah.
Here, it's not directed at her. Yeah. So I don't mind so much.
Yeah. And then the last thing is like his fervent desire to keep Sarah Jane safe. Like my three favorite moments involving the Doctor and Sarah Jane as a duo. Actually, sorry, no. My four favorite things: the Spanish Inquisition. Our chief weapons are surprise, surprise, and fear. So 4 things. 1, where's the pod? Oh, it's in the house around the corner from Jackville. Yeah. And Sarah Jane, kind of chiming in at the end of it. Like the whole, Scorbay, that thing. I'm the Doctor, and this is my best friend, Miss Smith. I like that. And also when he's in the compost and he's like, turn it off. He's like, which switch? Like the switch on the wall. Not that one.
I do love as well that, like, I love with the compost thing, we also have like the reverse of that where he's being, he obviously turns it off and gets her out later on. Mm-hmm. And then he's being pulled in by Chase. And you have Sarah, who's like 5'3", 5'4". Yeah. She's not that tall. No. Her hands are tied behind her back. This switch is really high. We started leaping for all she's worth, trying to reach the button. It's like, dude, you're gonna have to like flick the button like up. It's never going to work. But yeah, my other favorite duo moment of the two of them is when he's like, "Cool, just act casual." Basically, it's like his fly casual moment. Yeah. Where they just start walking across and keep walking, and guys are like, "Hey, stop it!" And he just keeps walking, and then they shoot, and he says to run. He's like, "Act normally," he says. You bellend. That was never going to work.
I like, as awesome as his anger was at times, I think it was a small bit overused here. Like, I felt like he was shouting maybe a bit more than was necessary. Like, I've seen you in trickier scenarios and you've kept your cool. Like the character now, maybe not this incarnation, but the character I've seen in arguably tougher scenarios and with a much more balanced tone.
Yeah, I think we might circle back to that when we actually get to the crinoid itself, because I have questions about the crinoid in the story, and I think part of it ties into that.
My last comment though is I do like how he tried to save Chase, even though Chase was in the act of actively trying to kill the Doctor at the same time. Yeah, because again, there are times where we will see that the Doctor deliberately takes someone's life. One story is going to be coming up in a couple of months that is from memory particularly malicious, but we'll get to that when we cross it. But here it's like I like seeing the sort of like, I'm trying to save you, stop, just stop what you're doing, I'm trying to save you. But I like that part of it as well.
Very good. Very good.
Then on to the companions. So, Sarah Jane.
If you're going to attack something with an axe, attack it with the sharp edge, not the bit that joins to the handle.
I was just thinking like that. She didn't like, so when she was hanging around with the unit lads, they clearly only had time to teach her how to shoot a gun. Like, there was no close combat lessons or anything like that from Benton. Because like, how the hell do you miss hitting that big fuck off tendril with a hatchet?
No, she hit it, but with the bit that the blunt end, it wasn't going to do anything. It effectively bounced off. I think Sarah in this one is interesting because, usually Sarah's really good at investigation and driving plot and stuff like that. We don't get to see too much of that in this story. We actually identifies Miss Ducat and like her artwork and stuff. But beyond that, her primary focus seems to be motivation, both as the Doctor being motivated, against threats to her, but also like her motivating Moberly, being like, "You can do this. You're the only one that can cut his arm off." You like she's really good at motivating people, and actually motivating Scorby as well. She's really good at motivating, and that kind of seems to be her job in this story.
I think with Morby, Scorby, it's less motivational and more shaming. I think
she's like that seems to be her job though. Here is sort of getting people going, getting them doing the action, both in a sort of passive way, in the sense that the Doctor is inspired to act to protect her and to save her and stuff like that, but also in an active way, which isn't a bad thing. Like I said, it's a good performance from Liz, you know, a couple of funny lines, you know, and stuff like that. But it's not really the same sort of plot driving that we're used to seeing from Sarah as a character, I don't think.
Yeah. Like, I agree in the sense of, like, there's not really anything new here from her. There's no real defining standout moment from her where, like, when she's on her own, bar her one-on-one with Scorby. You know, like, this is just a game to you. So long as there's guns, you can boss people around. You know, that, like, her one-to-ones with Scorby. And again, this is down to John Challis as well, because he has such good chemistry with her and with the Doctor as well. That, like, she refuses to be intimidated by him. Like, she's completely defiant. Although, like, at one point, I think he leaves the room and she kind of breathes a little sigh of relief. Now, that might just be the de-escalation of the situation kind of thing, as opposed to any sort of genuine worry or fear on her part. But, yeah, like, there's, bar that for me, there's nothing really anything here to stand out compared to some of her other performances.
Yeah, I mean, overall a good performance. Like, there's nothing bad.
Yeah.
But I think other than being a motivating factor, she doesn't really drive the plot in any big way. I do like her interactions with Scorby, particularly like in Antarctica. They don't really have much of an interaction, but when they get to the house, I do like her interactions. Like when it's just the two of them, and she's constantly being like, "You're such an asshole." Not everyone thinks the way you do. Like, some people are nice and kind, and they do exist.
Like, one thing I was thinking about in the sense of that. So last season, just thinking about her entire run. So with her in her first season was her and the Doctor, and it was her getting used to, like, the rapid pace of life in the TARDIS, and, you know, life with the Doctor, and he was such this strange otherworldly being. Then the next season with the brand new Doctor, it's like Harry is along for the ride as well. So this season is, like, I suppose her first real, I suppose Liz's first real chance to kind of really bring along the human comfort she had with Tom Baker and let that seep into the role, because it is actually starting to feel like just two friends that unfortunately end up in all these weird situations.
Yeah, very much so. And you can see that at the end of the story, and I'll talk about the end of the story when we're talking about the overall, but at the end where she's like, "Oh, Cassiopeia, that sounds fun," and then she's like, "This isn't Cassiopeia. We won't get a suntan here." It's just like, and then, like, her kind of going like, "You know, have we just arrived, or have we already been, or whatever the line is."
Yeah.
Like, have we been here before, or have we yet to come? I find that line weird in general. It's a weird read of the line.
It's the hypothermia.
But it's fun because then, you know, like, it's them just in their friendship.
It's the hypothermia setting in. But actually, just another thought I had there is that this, I suppose, is not only is it her first season, like, it's just her and Tom, it's also the first season without the framework of unit.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we had unit in Zygons, and there was a little bit in Android and a little bit in this, but it's not it's not the unit gang in the same way that it was before. So yeah, that's very different as well.
But that's pretty much all my thoughts on her.
Should we move on to prominent characters?
We should. So we have Sir Colin, Dunbar, and Keeler. So yes. Maybe that order, do you think?
Yeah, myself. I actually really like Sir Colin.
I love Sir Colin not for the fact that the actor who plays him, I love him in Porridge as the prison governor. I think he's hilarious. But it's such a relief to see a government official that is pretty much on board the whole time.
I love it. Like, he's not incompetent.
No.
He is both interested and willing to act. He is skeptical at times, but he's not an asshole about it.
He's skeptical in the sort of thing, it's like, that's a fairly outlandish story. I am willing to entertain it so long as you have the proof to back it up.
Yeah, and like he clearly, like, he could have sent anyone to the house, but he went with Mr. Car himself. Like, he was the one driving the car. I love that. I actually really like, because he's just a fun person in general.
He is, and like, even like at the very end where it's like, you know, the kind of, would you like to come along with us, Sir Colin? It's like, well, unfortunately, my wife is expecting us home for tea. So, like, you kind of get this impression that he's been made aware of, like, the unreliability of traveling in the TARDIS, shall we say?
Yeah, but it's such a contrast to, like, some of the other, like, government officials we've seen in Doctor Who in the past. Like, if we just think about, like, in, like, say, Sarah Jane's run, you know, we had obviously the government official who was trying to destroy the world.
Oh, the Golden Age dude, yeah.
Yeah, Invade the Dinosaurs. Like, this is such a contrast to that. Again, similar in the sense that you do have, like, if we hadn't met Dunbar first, you would kind of be concerned of, is this going to be invasion again? Do you know? But because we've met Dunbar, we know that Sir Colin isn't like that. But if you compare it to, what was your man from the Sea Devils?
Oh, yeah, that dude, I can't remember what his name was, but...
Yeah,
like,
but that guy would, you know...
Where's my toast?
Where's my toast? Here, take my coat, or whatever. It's nice just to have a government official who supports the plan, you know, he's willing to act, he defers when needed, he doesn't try to be like, oh, well, this is my purview. He's like, no, fuck it, what do we need?
I think it would have been kind of cool to see him as a recurring character during, like, the Third Doctor unit days.
I think so too. I think he would have been a really good. I think him and it's actually kind of unfortunate. I think him and Nicholas Courtney would have got along really well. I think his character in the Brig would have been a really good kind of duo together. Like, you can sort of imagine, like, at the end of an adventure, you know, the Doctor sort of swans off, refusing to do his reports in triplicate, and the two of them just go, like, down the barracks pub, and are just like, what the fuck was that?
Or even him and John would work really well together, and him and Joe. I think that would be nice. I think that'd be.
Oh, yeah, like Sir Colin and Joe, I think would have been a great pairing.
Yeah.
Do you know? Because you kind of get the sense that, like, Joe would go off on, like, one of her, like, sort of heightened, rambly conversations, and he'd fully entertain it. He wouldn't, like, you kind of sense like he wouldn't demean her or anything like that. He'd just let her speak, which I think is lovely.
So, moving on to Dunbar.
Yeah, the opposite of Thackeray.
Pretty much.
Sells secrets the highest bidder, doesn't even wait for more information before doing so.
Like, basically, like, he's even says it himself, like, he's sick and tired of being passed over by, pensionables and all this type of stuff. It's like, well, okay, I get that frustration, but dude, come on.
Yeah, and the fact that he then later tries to redeem himself when it all goes tits up, and he's like, oh, I need to take responsibility for my actions. It's like, really, now is, like, when they're trapped in the building, now is when you're going to admit what you did.
Well, I'm kind of glad that he, in terms of, like, because again, we've seen characters that, like Dunbar, do stuff like that, but do absolutely nothing to try and make it right, or even they don't even acknowledge the I'm looking at you, Kellerman. Yeah, fucking. But like, yeah, bastard. At least Dunbar is like, I did wrong. I have to try and make it right. He actually, and not only does he, like, say it to, like, a bad guy, he says it to the person that he has directly betrayed, Sir Colin.
Yeah, but I also just think, like, you're an asshole. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, he still took the money.
Yeah.
Do you know? After fucking the Antarctic base was blown up,
Hmm.
he could have told people then everything he knew, and he didn't.
Yeah. Well, like, I'm not denying that he's an asshole, but I'm happy at the fact that, like, okay, at least you had the balls to, like, fess up, you know, to the person. Eventually, yeah. Not,
I don't know. He irritated me from the get go. I think, like, I mean, it's not even the fact that, like, he sold, like, state secrets or whatever. It's the fact that he did so immediately. Like, he didn't even know Chase.
yeah.
And the doctor hadn't even gotten to see the pod yet. And immediately he was like, who could I sell this information to get some cash? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just, like, that's not even like, oh my god, there's this unique thing, I could make money off it. That was just, this thing is weird. I'm not going to wait and find out what it is. I'm not going to wait and see, you know, is it justified in me even trying to sell this information? I'm going to sell it. And then it's like, you know, you went too far. You didn't have to do that. I'm not going to tell anyone I know it was you, though, because that would get me in trouble. But later, when they do know it's you, and shit's kind of gone wrong, okay, then I'll fess up. And I'm like, yeah, fuck you. I wasn't particularly sad about his death, to be honest.
No, like, neither was I. But I'm just so sick and tired of seeing characters like betray, like, supposedly good characters betray people and not take any accountability for their actions, or if they do, it's like to the villain. Like, I'm just fucking sick of that. I'm like, oh, at least he had the fucking balls to say, it was me, I'm going to try and make up for it now. Doesn't excuse what he did, but I'm glad just to see that fucking difference.
Anything else you wanted to highlight about him?
It's Dunbar, not Dumb Bear, it's Dunbar.
Dumbass is what it is. Dumbass.
And Keeler.
Keeler is a character I find interesting and incredibly annoying. I love that, like, when he gets to Antarctica, he argues with Scorby like a small child, to the point where when Scorby's on the radio, it's literally like, you know, flailing hands trying to get his attention and stuff like that. And, like, when he's going to tie up Stevenson, the fact that he says, like, excuse me, when he goes to tie him up. Like, clearly Keeler is a lover, not a fighter. Let's put it that way. I don't get why he stays, though. Like, he clearly hates working with Scorby. He thinks Chase is a fucking lunatic. So just fucking leave.
So this is my biggest annoyance at Keeler, okay? Because two characters here, Scorby and Keeler, remind me of Regan and scientist dude from Ambassadors of Death. Scorby, obviously, because, you know, he's the thuggish muscle. Not as smart as Regan, I would say, but he's... And Keeler, obviously, seems to be fulfilling the role of, like, reluctant scientist. But it's like, but why are you reluctant? At least we knew the other guy's motivations were that he was a laughingstock within the scientific community, or he was discredited, so therefore, like, you know, he was doing anything to try and either pay the bills and reinstate his good name, or just his name. But Keeler, it's like a case of, okay, you don't like working for the guy, you get treated like shit, but never once are we told what your motivations are. Like, do you have a large cocaine habit? Do you have a big gambling debt? Like,
I think that's the problem with him, is that, like, why does he stay there? Just fucking leave, dude. Like, we're never told, like, you know, is he not allowed to leave?
Does Chase
is that why Chase has so many armed guards on private property?
Does Chase have compromising photos of you with plant life or something like that? It's
just go. You don't like what he's doing. Like, you didn't like getting the pod in the first place, but then you don't agree with his experiments, and you think he's a fucking Fruit Loop. So leave. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I don't like blaming the victim, but, like,
see,
put your fucking sleeves down, you dope. But also, like, from our perspective as viewers, he had every chance to leave, and he didn't take it.
But this is the thing, is like, we don't know if he is the victim because we have no idea what his motivations or what his thing is.
He's the victim of the crinoid. Do you know what I mean? So he's the victim in that sense. I don't want to say that's his own fault.
Yeah.
But he did roll up his sleeves when he knows that it can reach out and attack you, and then just casually leant against the table.
But this thing is like, the only description we get of him is from Chase. You know, he's a brilliant researcher. Like, but quite frankly, I prefer to get the story from a much saner horse's mouth. You know.
Yeah, and like even later on, you know, he's like, oh, if you let me go, I won't hurt you. You know, whatever. And it's like, okay, this is like half crinoid, half Keeler speaking, but at the same time, Keeler, like, have you looked down? She's not going to fucking let you go. It's not going to happen. And why are you surprised that they're not taking you to a doctor? Do you know, like, you've met these people, you've worked with them for presumably a long period of time.
No, just a frustrating character. And not even frustrating in the sense of, like, you know, like, you're so fucking stupid. It's like why, what is even your, like, why are you there? Like, you're not a headache for the good guys. You're not a liability for the bad guys. You're just an incubator.
Yeah, like, this is one of those instances where Sarah's journalism background would have been really helpful. Like, if she meets Keeler, or like when she finds out Keeler's name, and the fact that he's a botanist, if she was like, oh my god, he's that Keeler. The disgraced guy who, you know, was, you know, thrown out of the Botanical Society for shagging a bush. I don't know. But, like, at least, like, we have a character there who has given us this type of information in the past. Who, even if we didn't get it from Keeler himself, or we didn't get it from Chase or Scorby, Sarah could have told us why he's there. Or give us an indication as to why he's there. Also, like, you know, he stands up against Chase, or against Scorby, rather, in Antarctica. He's like, oh no, you can't. You can't blow up, this is murder. She's right, this is murder. And then he's like, the timer's already started. He's just like, oh. And then he leaves. He doesn't even say sorry. He just leaves.
Why was Keeler kicked out of the Royal Botanical Society? According to this, he stuck his penis into a Venus flytrap just to see what would happen. Alright. So now we have the villains. So there's Chase, Scorby, and the Crinoid. What way do you want to stack this? Because we usually like to go with do the big bad at the end, or at least the most interesting bad at the end.
Yeah, I think the most interesting bad is actually Chase. Okay. And then the Crinoid, and then Scorby.
Okay. So discuss Scorby first, and then work our way up to Chase?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
I love villains like Scorby because it's so satisfying to see the Doctor take a bully to task physically, like smacking a chair over him, giving him a chiropractic adjustment, like uppercutting him.
All that was missing was Sarah kicking him in the balls.
Pretty much.
Only bit that was missing.
Yeah. But I also love when the companion refuses to be intimidated by them, you know? Much way that, like, we had Regan, like, he's like a kind of a comparable thing. Sevcharia from the Romans. I keep bringing him up because I love Sevcharia. I thought he was a great villain. So I like villains like that. I think the antagonistic relationship between him and the Doctor was great. Like, it's the chemistry between Tom and John is fantastic. John and Sarah Jane is great, or Liz Sladen is great as well. But it's just like this dynamic where it's like, you know, Scorby, who clearly is a mercenary of some description, is like kind of he's just a scientist or whatever. It's like, you know, I'm better than you, I can beat you up physically. Well, this chair tends to disagree with that. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I think he had a really good presentation throughout the story, because he goes from hard muscle, certain of himself, to paid muscle, which is like, or the acknowledgement that I'm just a gun for hire, regardless of all the weird shit going around. And then it's like, he's like, I survived Afghanistan, I survived the Middle East, wherever else he would have been stationed. I survived all this kind of stuff, and this is the stuff that cracks him, It's the unknown. It's the faceless enemy. I thought that was great. The way he died is creepy. It's just like drowning in and of itself is bad enough. But being pulled beneath the water with no hope of escape, or being obstructed from breaking the water's surface, it just adds to it. It's just very unsettling.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think like Scorby is an asshole, but in the best possible way.
Yeah,
he's a very well written asshole character. Like I said, he has great interactions with pretty much everybody. His interactions with Sarah Jane are great. His interactions with the Doctor are great. Like I love the fact that like the Doctor's like, I'm the Doctor. This is Sarah Jane Smith. This is Scorby. I don't know his first name. That whole bit is lovely. I love the way he is with Sarah and the way she is back with him. Like he's constantly trying to sort of break her spirit and bring her down to his level, and she's just refusing to have it. But he does say it himself. He is a mercenary who only thinks of himself. To the point where he can't even comprehend that people may care for each other enough that they would stay and fight, or they would return to it. Because he keeps saying, like, oh, they've scarpered, because I would.
Yeah.
And Sarah's like, not everyone's like you. Nice people exist. People do things for the betterment of others. Like, not everyone's a selfish prick like you. But I love the fact that, like, he's not shy about who he is. Like, he doesn't try to be like, oh, well, Chase, gave me money and I kind of fell into... It's like, no, I'm a hired hand. Like, he explained that's why he became a mercenary. He doesn't lie about it.
No.
Which is good. I agree with you, his death is probably the most visceral of the deaths that we see. With... we don't see the death of the unit sergeant who gets put through the composter.
No.
But we do see Scorby, so I think his death is probably the most visceral.
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, you don't feel bad for him because he's an asshole, but like you do at the same time.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you kind of have to go like. They always say, like, no one deserves to die that way, and it's true. Like, no one deserves to die in any way other than, I suppose you could say, like, fucking natural causes. But like, it's, if you are to be murdered, like, it's just like you'd rather just get shot or stabbed. Like, you don't want to be fucking that type of thing. No, but like, and it's just, again, writing is always. We always say, like, writing is like half the battle. You need to have a good casting, and John Challis is brilliant here. He's so good.
He's fantastic in this role.
Yeah.
He's very good.
The Crinoid next.
Yeah, so I was having a weird position when it comes to the Crinoid. So you mentioned earlier that the Doctor sort of loses the rag a bit more than you'd think he would in this type of situation, compared to the situations he's been in the past, right? But in many ways, I think the Crinoid as a threat is very poorly developed. So, for example, the Doctor says that the pods always travel in pairs.
Yeah.
Why do they travel in pairs? What's the point of that?
Yeah, because like he says that, and then later on he says that, oh, they must have been dislodged due to like seismic,
a random eruption. Or something.
It's like, if that's the case, why is it only ever two? Like, they're not the fucking Sith.
Yeah, like there's no explanation for why they travel in pairs. There's no explanation for what happens if one of those pairs dies or doesn't germinate or whatever. There's no explanation for that. And even when it comes to like the later parts of the story, so the Doctor's freaking out considerably, and like, okay, so it's going to become a big giant plant, and it's going to eat people. That's bad. It's bad. But we don't really get a sense of, like, we only find out information when the crinoid does something? Why isn't the Doctor telling us more about this threat? I think that's the bit that I sort of don't like about it, is that like it's sort of like it's incredibly underdeveloped. Like, is it, you know, is fire something it's afraid of? Do you know? And this is where I think the fact that we didn't have the science doctor experimenting, I think, kind of hurts this a bit. We had the doctor reacting, but we don't really know why he's reacting that way. Like the fact that they travel in pairs, I don't get that. I genuinely don't. The fact that they can communicate is interesting, because that's not something that the Doctor tried to do with Winlet.
No.
And plus, I completely forgot that it actually had the ability to communicate until we had the Keeler crinoid. And first, the Keeler crinoid is creepy as hell. And like the whole idea of the crinoids is creepy. But I just think it was poorly explained.
Yeah.
In the story. Like, does steam hurt them? If so, why didn't they make use of that earlier? You know, we find out that, like, can they take over people's minds without that person becoming a crinoid? The Doctor kind of suggests yes, but we'll talk about that more with Chase. I don't think that was true. I think Chase is a lunatic.
Yeah.
You know, is it the crinoid controlling all of the plants further away? Or is it just the crinoid's influence that's unleashing the power of the plant? Like, how does that work? I don't know. Like, for me, I think it was just a lot of unanswered questions. It looks cool. I like the theory. I just think it was poorly developed.
Yeah. So, like, as a concept, I think the crinoids are pretty cool. Like, because the fact that it can attach itself to anything organic and grow from there, it's kind of reminiscent of, you know, like the xenomorphs, you know, because like we see them first of all in the first two movies coming from humans, then one comes from the dog, and then it's all this other stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. But if you were to bring the crinoids back at any stage, like, it opens up like a huge amount of possibilities for storytelling, like, because like seeing like an adventure that starts off on a planet taken over by a crinoid, you know, when it's just one big sentient jungle planet or whatever, that would be pretty cool. Or if the Doctor and co arrive in the middle of an infestation, like not from the start of it, but the middle of one. So, and like if it's, you know, you say like, okay, whatever it, say if it takes on some of the attributes of whatever it germinates in, you know, like, I can imagine, like, for example, like a crinoid starting off on Scarrow, you know, taking you over Daleks, or something like that. Like, I think it would be kind of cool. But this is, it's such a weird thing, because even though there's a cool concept to it, I don't think it's executed particularly well. Like, you know, like whatever about the explanation of it, there's just something about the execution of it that it doesn't hit the same as, like, for example, like Axos, you know, like the sentient organism, or even the Animus. Yeah. It just doesn't really hit the same for some reason. Which is a shame.
I think that in terms of like hive mind kind of, you know, villain or like villainous species, I do think the Animus is really still the top tier for that in Doctor Who.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what possibly could have done this a small bit better is, okay, we see that it's taken over the vegetation of stuff. I think if you had like a 3-tiered thing, which is like its influence on vegetation, it corrupting or like, you know, transforming other people that it like infects, and then you have the main crinoid, like the Keeler crinoid, but like say the security guards. Like, I think having like this varying levels of threat would have probably added to the tension of it. As it is, it's just huge, giant, jolly green giant beanstalk outside, and then vines smashing windows. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Which is unfortunate, because interesting concept.
Yeah.
But then we have Chase.
This dude is fucking cuckoo.
He is so much more... He didn't even get fries in his Happy Meal.
No.
Do you know? He got 4 chicken nuggets and that was it.
Like, I will admit, I admire his goal of ensuring that plant life or ecology gets the same level of environmental protection as animal life does.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, his initial question to Dunbar, when he finds out who Dunbar is, and he's like, what are you doing about this?
Yeah.
Now, the fact that he says that the Japanese culture is torturing
trees.
plants, you know, his phrasing of it is perhaps a little extreme.
I would just kind of guess, like, dude, we see you walk across grass multiple times in this story. Don't talk to us about fucking torturing plant life if that's what you're going to be doing, you know?
Yeah, like, I mentioned a while ago about the crinoid taking him over. And the doctor says that, like, after Chase interacted with the crinoid outside the house when he was taking the pictures, that the fact that Chase was unharmed means that the crinoid clearly took him over. I don't see any difference in him.
No, it is. This is that, you know, the Lesterson listen side of things. It's where someone whose mental state is on the tipping point, and then the ideology that they adhere to, they see it in all its wonderful, powerful glory. Or they completely believe that they are this thing. They like, in the sense of, like, Lester said, you know, I am your servant. You know, that he did start having the phrasings and mannerisms of a Dalek. So Chase is the exact same thing here. Like, like his musical soundboard, like the Symphony of the Plants or whatever the hell it is, like, that's just a weird tip of the iceberg. I don't know about
you. As well. If Chase was anywhere near as intelligent as he claims to be, this story would have been over in 3 episodes. He keeps saying he's going to kill them. But first he'll give them a tour of his house. And then he'll give them a tour of his greenhouse. Then he'll put on a musical performance for them. Then he has them taken away to be killed later when he can enjoy it. I'm like, okay, I love the Doctor and Sarah. Just fucking shoot them! Like, the reason the story is so long is because Chase is like, no, I want to listen to my symphony of whatever. And I'm going to come back to that soundboard in a bit as well. But, like, dude, just kill them. Like, don't try and turn them into compost. You can do that later.
Like, you know, the way he kept wearing gloves? I was expecting him, like, to have, like, green hands or, like, you know, like, be weird chlorophyll, or him to have, like, show signs of prepossession or something like that. No, he just wears gloves. Like,
I will say, though, his actor is phenomenal. Like, the guy who plays him is, like, the performance is brilliant. Like, hands down, it's a brilliant performance.
Yeah.
But the character is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
He absolutely is. Like, to the sense of, like, you know, the Doctor's trying to save you, yet you're intent upon killing him. As, like, no, this is just... it's just fucking stupid.
Also, how does this guy have so many armed guards on a private premises in the UK? Like, I get that he's got a lot of money.
Why do you need all these armed guards? Greenfly.
But, like, it's not just that they're guards who have, like, pistols. They have full-on fucking... I don't know what type of gun they are, but they're like...
I think they had Uzis.
Yeah. On a private premises. That has to be against... And no one comments on it, do you know? Or, like, what I find hilariously funny, right, is... I actually forgot to talk about Dunbar. Dunbar makes, like, the stupidest choice ever, and Chase is just like, for fuck's sake. Dunbar says he'll take care of the Doctor and Sarah. So he has Chase's chauffeur in Chase's car. who tried to kill them. Why did Chase give him his car with his chauffeur? Like, why was that guy there in the first place? Like, surely Chase wouldn't want to have his name anyway associated with this. But yeah, no, let's have that be the car that picks them up outside the World Ecology Bureau where everyone can see. And I was like, okay, interesting choice.
Did you get the reg on the car? Yes, it was BADGUY 1. So, I think I figured this out. Whoever does the socials is actually the first person to speak.
Really?
I think it is, because I did the socials last week and I went first. You did the socials this week, so therefore you should go first.
Okay. For the story, I do like the story in itself. I think the thing influences are great. I think the intelligent plant life story is interesting and scary in turn. I think the idea of the crinoids is really interesting. The Doctor and Sarah have a great relationship in this. Chase is an interesting study of lunacy. We have, like I said, a politician that we actually like. We have Scorby, who is a good muscle man villain, like an interesting muscle man villain. However, I do agree with Philip. Miss Dukas and her storyline is pure filler for a story that was clearly struggling to reach its 6-episode runtime. Like, all the times that Chase says he's going to kill them, and he doesn't. The prolonged wait of them being captured and all of this talking, and like the Doctor was in the compost room for like fucking 10 minutes of like showtime, before they actually put him in the composter and went to kill him. That kind of stuff I think is incredibly obvious in this story in particular. Like, the first 2 episodes I think were dingers. The first 2 episodes were great. But once it gets back to England, it just... It's not even that it slows down, because it does keep moving, but it's just like these small steps that are clearly there to fill the runtime.
Anything set in Antarctica is great.
Yeah, that's true. But like, this is a story where I do think it would have benefited from having... This could have been a really good, proper unit story in the second, or in the
second
latter
half.
2/3. It could have been a really good unit story. With our proper unit gang involved, I think it would have been really, really interesting, because these are characters we care about. And we have connections to. And so we could do cutbacks to them that you'd be interested in, rather than, another person's boy in the compost machine. Or whatever. Also, the ending makes no sense. The TARDIS never went to Antarctica. So why would the coordinates be set for Antarctica?
Yeah.
It is the thing that has bothered me ever since I first saw the story, those many years ago. The Doctor and Sarah went to Antarctica by plane. The TARDIS never went there. The TARDIS should never have been programmed to go there. So their whole thing of like, have we just arrived or are we yet to come? Makes no fucking sense, because the TARDIS never should have gone there in the first place. It is like the smallest nitty fucking thing.
So I agree with you about the whole TARDIS coordinates being preset. Yeah, that's stupid. Maybe they just meant their own personal timeline.
Well, yeah, but it's done in coordination with the TARDIS bringing them back there, and I'm like, what the? That makes no fucking sense. That's fucking ridiculous. So yeah, unfortunately it's a bit of a mixed bag for me in terms of my enjoyment of it. Like, I struggle with 6-episode long stories in general. This is one of the... is it as bad as A Rent of the Cybermen? No.
And that's a 4-parter.
That was a 4-parter. Why did I think it was 6?
Because...
It fucking drags on forever. That's why I thought it was 6.
Yeah.
So, it's not the worst six-parter we've had. It's not the worst story we've had at all. But for me, it's very much a middling story. It has some. It has nothing. There's no character bits that are wrong that I like. I hated that. There was nothing I hated. There just wasn't as much for me to love. So I gave it a 3. I think that might be being a bit generous. But I couldn't really bring myself to give it lower than that. I'm sure there are people who enjoy the story a great deal. I just think it was too long and too padded for my like. When we said that we had an underdeveloped villain species in the form of the crinoid, and we felt that the 6 episodes was padded, that sounds like you could tell this one was done in a rush.
Yeah.
How about you?
So, I think you've been in my notes again. So
I didn't have time to go into your fucking notes even if I wanted to.
So the story is far too long. It really is. Like, it starts off as a thing, so immediate buy-in from me. Then it changes into the sort of the blob that had everything. And separately, those are really good stories to go down. Like, have it all, like, either set it all in Antarctica or find a way that in episode 1, the pod arrives in England to chase. Okay? They don't mix the two together, because it's a very jarring experience to go from 2 in Antarctica to 4 in London. And like, the reason it's jarring is because of as you said, like, the first 2 episodes are really good. It's the inconsistency in pacing and quality of the story, right? Like, so yeah, and it's like Ducat. First scene makes perfect sense. Drives the plot. Oh yeah, like Harrison Mace based whatever, chase, like, perfect. She's the one that tells him where to go. Her second appearance as like the sort of like the spy for Sir Colin, that's grand as well. There's a nice tie into that. We do not need to see like a 2.5-minute scene of her in Sir Colin's office talking about her days in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force manning an ACAC gun, during the Blitz. Like, it adds nothing bar some bit of humor that isn't really that funny.
Yeah.
It's not like Corporal Jones in Dad's Army constantly going on about, the Germans, they don't like it of him or anything like that, It comes across as, unfortunately, the ramblings of an old lady. And it doesn't really go well. So that the fucking the musical shit, like, there's a better way of doing that. You don't need, like, because this is the thing, Chase's credibility as an actual threat for me diminishes with that, like, concert he gives.
I forgot to come back around to that. Go on. Sorry, I'll have a comment on that in a second.
Yeah, him playing the music in the background, perfectly fine. Like, as in, like, like, it's an audio recording or whatever. But him actually giving a concert, that, like, it's like it's like, put them on the unnecessarily, slow conveyor belt to the very slow circular saw. Like, that's what it is. Like, the production values I thought were really good. Like, as you said, like, the Axos suit looks much better green for the crinoids. It really does. The effects of the plants and everything breaking in and killing people, really good.
The model work I thought was very good.
Model work was really good as well. The cast, for the most part, yeah, pretty solid. But John Challis puts them all to shame. Like, Scorby is fantastic. Like, for me, like, in terms of legitimacy, I think Scorby is the best villain, or the most important villain. We just talked about Chase last because he's just fucking insane, whereas I think Scorby is probably the realest threat to them, and he's also the most interesting. Did like the Doctor and Sarah Jane here as a duo, and again, as I said, I loved Sir Colin because of the lack of military bureaucracy. Even Major Beresford, it's like there's no like this is insane or like like this is like it's like dude you work for a unit this is your like bread and butter, but no, Sir Colin was a breath of fresh air when it comes to having a bureaucrat involved in the stories, and I absolutely loved it, and I actually am annoyed that he wasn't a recurring character beforehand or afterwards, because great character.
Yeah, I'm also kind of sad that that actor never was on the show again.
Yeah,
because he was really good as an actor as well.
He's a really good actor.
So what's your score?
Oh, sorry. I was waiting for you to come back around to your point.
Okay, I'll do my thing. So if you want. Yeah. The music board, right? I was waiting for it to be Chekhov's music board. Where the Doctor uses it to create a god-awful noise.
Yeah.
That the crinoid reacts badly to. Because that is the only reason I could think why they focused so much on the fucking music board.
I think it was
that it would come around in the end and be useful. But it doesn't. It's just weird.
It's like, we need to get across how weird Chase is. We know how weird he is. We get it. You
can do the weird bit and also have it be helpful in the end. But no, we just did the weird part and we didn't have the helpful part. But yeah, sorry, I forgot about that when we were talking. Back to your score.
Yeah, my score is 3 out of 5. It's like, unfortunately, for a relatively very strong season.
Yeah, because like, so just to give you the numbers, so your average is finishing up at 4.17 minus 4.21, and that kind of surprises me because like last season was a dinger. In fairness, it was 4.45, and I was like, oh, season 13 has to at least match it. We have Terror, Planet, Pyramids, Morbius. Like, even though like some of those, like you gave 5s and some of them I gave 5s, like they were all like 4.5 and above. I was like, we have to at least match it. Android nuked it in the middle, and unfortunately, it didn't stick the landing. So we have 2 low stories out of 6, which means that our averages. Now, I'm saying, unfortunately, it's still a fantastic season. I mean, it's still a 4.17, 4.21 average. It has Terror the Zygons. It has Planet of Evil. It has Pyramids of Mars. It has Brain of Morbius. Like, it's a fucking dinger of a season.
Like those
2, you can just skip though.
Yeah, like those first 3 are back to back.
Yeah,
they're fucking back to back, and I was like, for me, I was going through. It's a 5, a 4.5, and a 5. Then you've got it for you. It's 2 5s and a 4.75.
4.75.
Yeah. But like, yeah, it's an incredible fucking run of 3 stories. Android, unfortunately, as you said, nukes it. Comes back strong with Morbius, and then
falls over a vine at the end.
Yeah, Jesus, and it falls over a vine and gets dragged into a murky pond.
Yeah, to be honest, this like, I think in many ways they're doing really just emphasize by the fact that like, unless they're exceptionally good, 6-parters just aren't sustainable from a storytelling point of view. We've had a few that were phenomenal, but like, at least for me, 6-parters just aren't really sustainable. They bored the ever-living Christ out of me.
I'm just looking back here at some of our previous scores, okay? And we haven't had, just from looking at it here, we haven't had a joint season finale above 4 since Inferno.
Wow. Yeah, because fuck me, that was a long time ago.
That is John's first season.
Fuck.
No, I'm not.
Inferno was amazing.
Yeah, and this isn't like overall seasonal score. This is like the last story of the season, sticking the landing and scoring the perfect 10, which Inferno did. It got a 5 from both of us.
So did the season before. War Games got 5 as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of sticking the landing, I don't think we've had.
We don't talk about the Wheel of Space.
We don't talk about it. I don't think we've had both of us be like, that was an amazing story. Now, like, I gave the Demons 4.25, I gave 3.7, which is good. It's above average.
Yeah.
Time Monster, average to above. Green Death, fuck you. Spiders, above average.
Because like we did have our kind of our disagreement about that because it just didn't click for me. But there were parts of it that we did like, parts of it we both didn't like. John and you kind of like your self indulgence, but like Revenge of the Cybermen, like I'm so angry at that fucking story. I really am.
It's just it's bad. Anyway, it's not bad. It's just frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the end of season 13. Right, and so far for John's first 2 seasons, Tom's first 2 seasons. Why did I say John? For Tom's first 2 seasons, he is still running high. Do you know? He's got 4.45 average, and between the two of us, and a 4.19 average. And Sarah Jane is also running high, a 4, a 4.45, a 4.19. So next week we're going to be starting season 13 with Sarah's penultimate story, which is The Mask of Mandragora.
Which I cannot wait to start watching again, because I think once we're finished that, should be starting the 2nd season of the Sarah Jane Smith audio series.
Very good.
Yeah, so it's all teamed, lads. It's all interconnected. We'll explain as we go on. But yeah, so yep. I suppose so. Get on your fanciest garb, because we're going back to medieval Italy for The Mask of Mandragora.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Marlene.